Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we sit down to do this, I have a stack of newspapers, maybe some policy papers from a think tank. We try to piece together what on earth is happening in the world by looking at the politics. What did the president say? Who shook hands with whom?
Right, the user interface of the world, basically,
Yeah,
the shiny buttons on the screen that make us feel like we understand how the machine actually works.
exactly. But today's different. You dropped this document on my desk this morning that honestly it looks like it belongs in a server room. It's heavy, it's redacted, and the title isn't a foreign policy review. It's called Technical Dossier: 68 Days of Total Synchronization.
Yeah, it is a dense read. But once you crack the code, and I mean that literally because the language is almost entirely technical, it changes how you see everything that has happened since New Year's Day.
And that's the promise of this deep dive. For everyone listening, we aren't looking at politics today. We are doing a technical audit. Because the central claim of this dossier, which covers just the last 68 days from January 1st to February 28th, 2026, is that politics is dead.
Completely dead.
It says we've entered the age of logistics. And there's a number on the cover page that I literally circled in red marker. 68 out of 68 hits.
100% uptime.
68 predictions. 68 hits. We're talking about coups, currency collapses, trade wars, military strikes, all of it predicted or executed with the precision of a computer program. I mean, if a weather forecaster got it right 68 days in a row, you'd think he was a wizard.
But this isn't magic. It is engineering. And that's the shift you need to make right now if you're trying to understand this. We need to stop thinking about nations as democracies or dictatorships or allies and enemies.
Hey, those words don't even appear in here.
No, because in the eyes of the Bulldozer Core OS, which is the logistical operating system we're analyzing today, those labels are irrelevant. There are only compatible nodes and corrupted sectors.
That is, well, it's dehumanizing, isn't it? Corrupted sectors, we're talking about countries where millions of people live. It sounds like we're talking about a hard drive that needs to be defragmented.
That is exactly the point. The architect behind this dossier argues that emotion causes latency. Ideology causes latency. If you want a global system that runs without crashing, you have to treat the world like hardware. You either synchronize with the core or you get, well, desinstallato.
Uninstalled, which is a terrifying euphemism for what we've seen happen in Venezuela and Iran these last 2 months. So let's boot this thing up. We need to go chronologically because the dossier says the system had to be patched before it could be saturated.
Yeah, we have to start with Act 1, the architecture of control. This takes us back to January 2026.
I'm going to read the institutional log entry for January. It's written in this incredibly grave historical tone. It says, January 2026. The system issued the first alert. The Donroe Doctrine. The Western Hemisphere is not a political space. It is a private server. Whoever does not synchronize is uninstalled.
The Donroe Doctrine.
I'm assuming that's a mashup of the Monroe Doctrine.
It is a patch on the old code. The Monroe Doctrine back in 1823 was basically the U.S. saying to European powers to stay out of our backyard.
Oh.
But it was framed in the language of sovereignty. It was about letting new nations be free.
Right.
The Donroe Doctrine strips the paint off. It says, this isn't a backyard, this is server rack. And we're the system administrators.
It implies absolute administrative access, no guests allowed.
Precisely. And what is the first thing a sysadmin does when a server is acting up? They check the power supply. Pull up print number 3 on page 28.
Okay, looking at it now. It's dated January 24th, 2026. It's a graph with Iran as the target, but the method listed is energy asphyxiation. But the method isn't sanctions, it's the $50 pacifier.
This is the genius and the cruelty of the system. The dossier argues that the crank axis China, Russia, Iran, North Korea runs on a specific voltage, high oil prices.
Because Russia needs oil at roughly $80 a barrel to fund its war machine.
Right, and balance its budget. Iran needs it at 70 or higher to fund its proxies across the Middle East.
So if you pin the price at $50...
You starve them. You turn off the oxygen. At $50 a barrel, the U.S. economy is fine. Actually, it's booming because energy is cheap, which lowers inflation. But for the rivals, their budget deficits explode. They can't pay their soldiers. They can't buy chips.
It acts as an energy pacifier.
Exactly. It forces them into dormancy because they simply can't afford to move.
But hold on. You can't just wave a magic wand and make oil $50. The market controls that. Supply and demand.
Unless you control the physical hardware of the market. Unless you control the supply so absolutely that you can dictate the price. Which brings us to the second event in January. Venezuela. The handshake.
I remember the headlines in January perfectly. Maduro captured in a daring raid. Interim government restores democracy. The news played it like this grand liberation story. It was cinematic.
Yeah, that was the user interface version, the story we tell ourselves to feel good. But look at the technical analysis on page 40, threat number 7. How does the Bulldozer OS describe it?
It calls the capture of Maduro a force restart.
A force restart, like holding down the power button on a frozen laptop. To the Bulldozer, Maduro wasn't a dictator abusing human rights. He was a corrupted driver.
He was mismanaging PDVSA, the state oil company.
Yes, he was shipping oil inefficiently. He was sending it to the wrong nodes, China and India outside the core. He was causing friction in the hemisphere's energy grid.
So they didn't take him out because he was bad. They took him out because he was slow, because he was causing lag.
They took him out to reconnect the hardware. Notice the immediate aftermath. We didn't see a massive nation-building project with schools and elections immediately. What did we see?
Engineers. Thousands of them.
Flying in to audit the rigs, repair the pipelines, and crucially sync the production directly to the U.S. Reserve.
That explains the timestamp note here on page 40. It says, response to White House, 12:48 p.m. plus 3 hours.
Exactly. The system was driving the policy. Before the political speeches were even written, the oil assets were being audited. The goal was to flood the market with Venezuelan oil, controlled by the U.S., to drive the global price down to that $50 mark. Venezuela was the battery pack they needed to plug in.
That is cold. Effective, but cold. It reduces a revolution to a cable repair job.
The tractor does not negotiate. It adjusts the frequency. And it did this with 35 days of advance notice in the logs. Hardware doesn't lie.
Okay, I can wrap my head around Venezuela. Historically, that's a volatile relationship anyway. But we have to talk about page 41, because this feels personal. The northern backdoor.
Yeah, this is where the Donroe Doctrine proves it has no favorites. It proves it is an algorithm, not a friendship.
It's talking about Canada, my neighbors to the north. We share a border, a culture, a language. We are allies. But the dossier refers to Canada like it's a security vulnerability.
A firewall breach. That is the specific term used in the system.
A firewall breach. And it references the tariffs. In January, the U.S. slapped those 25% tariffs on Canada. Everyone thought Washington was losing its mind. Why are we taxing maple syrup and lumber? We need that stuff.
But the dossier says it was never about the lumber.
Then what was it about?
It was about the code embedded in the Canadian mining sector. The Bulldozer ran a scan, essentially a background process, and found that Chinese state-owned enterprises had acquired controlling stakes in critical mineral mines in northern Ontario and the Yukon. We are talking about lithium, cobalt, rare earths.
The stuff you need for batteries, for electric vehicles, for missiles.
Exactly. To the core OS, Canada had left a port open. They were letting the rival system China write data onto the hard drive of North America. Look at the Systemic Vision posts on page 41 regarding Canada and Greenland.
Right, the core strength protocol on page 51.
Yes. You can't have a secure server if your neighbor leaves the back door unlocked. It doesn't matter if your neighbor is nice, if their security is bad, they are a risk.
So the tariffs weren't trade policy, they were a weapon.
They were a security patch. The 25% tariff was designed to make those mines financially toxic for the Chinese investors. It forced a liquidation. It made it too expensive for China to hold on to those assets.
And looking at the resolution entry, the moment the assets were sold to core-aligned entities, the tariffs just vanished.
The Bulldozer doesn't negotiate. It doesn't sit down for a summit. It just adjusts the frequency, in this case the tax rate, until the interference is gone.
That is a fundamentally different way of looking at diplomacy. It's not, I'll give you this if you give me that. It's, I'm applying pressure until you comply.
It's binary, 1 or 0, open or closed. The system detected a vulnerability in Canada, and it patched it. The fact that it hurt the Canadian economy for a month was irrelevant to the OS. The priority was system integrity.
So January was about cleaning up the home server, the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela gets a forced restart to lower oil prices. Canada gets a firewall patch to kick out China. The board is set.
That brings us to Act 2, hardware saturation. We are moving into February 2026 now.
February is where the system goes from maintenance mode to active stress testing.
The institutional log for February marks the Munich Security Conference. It reads, February, the Munich Security Report officially adopts the term bulldozer politics. The stress index reaches the level of critical resonance.
Critical resonance.
What exactly is a stress index?
Imagine a pressure gauge on a boiler. The stress index measures geopolitical pressure on a scale of 0 to 10. In early February, it hit 7.6. That is the red zone. It means the system is vibrating so hard it's about to crack.
And what caused that spike? Why did the needle jump?
Two massive events. First, look at print page 32, the Dmitriev package, dated February 16th, 2026. This was a massive $12 trillion attempt by the Russian sphere to stabilize their own economy and create a countersystem. $12 trillion! That's an insane amount of money. That's enough to buy almost anything.
It is. But money only works if the pipes are open. The dossier says the package collapsed by the pressure of the bulldozer. Essentially, the U.S. system made it impossible for that capital to move. They blocked the routing. They threatened secondary sanctions on any node that even looked at the money.
So they had the cash, but they couldn't spend it.
Exactly. It's like having a winning lottery ticket locked inside a safe you can't open. The U.S. system rejected the transaction.
Which brings us to print page 41, stress index 7.6. And it says here, 55% probability of kinetic war on February 20th.
Because you can't solve it with money, you have to solve it with guns. Diplomacy runs out of bandwidth. But the other factor raising the index, the SMU marked it at 7.8, was the diagnosis that the northern backdoor of Canada was successfully closed and the Asian hard layer was synchronizing.
The Asian hard layer, I see the note here, Japan and Tokyo Electron honor the blacklist.
This is critical. We need to explain who Tokyo Electron is. They are one of the only companies in the world that makes the specific machines needed to manufacture high-end computer chips.
So they don't make the chips themselves, they make the factory.
Correct. They make the ink for the printer. If you don't have their machines, you can't print chips, period. By forcing them to honor the U.S. blacklist, the Core OS effectively bricked the semiconductor ambitions of the Crank axis. It aligned Japan's manufacturing equipment strictly with the core.
Bricked. Like when you update your phone wrong and it turns into a paperweight. So they bricked the Asian tech sector for the rivals?
Yes. And think about the position that puts the rivals in. Their money, that $12 trillion, is frozen. Their oil is being suffocated by the $50 price. And now, their future tech industry is being denied the hardware it needs to exist. This is what the dossier calls hardware saturation.
It sounds like checkmate before the game is even over.
It is saturating the battle space, not with soldiers, but with constraints. And with the northern backdoor sealed and the Asian hard layer synchronized, the system was ready for the global dark switch. The warning was given 8 days in advance.
The dark switch. That sounds ominous.
It is. It means the diplomatic phase is over, the hardware is saturated, the machine is ready to fire.
Which leads us directly into Act 3. The dossier calls this the oblivion moment, spanning February 23rd to the 28th. The institutional log here is chilling. It says February 23, the 5-day window, absolute silence in the Gulf. The world saw diplomacy. The monitor saw the firing checksum.
That silence is the loudest thing in the data. When the stress index is at 7.8 and suddenly the diplomatic chatter stops, that is the firing checksum. It means the code for the launch has been validated, the politicians have left the room, the generals and the engineers have entered.
I'm looking at print page 13 right now, the SMS hack, February 23rd. The message just says, wait and see.
That was the hack, known as Man of His Word, in Iran. It was a psychological cyber operation. We usually think of cyber warfare as taking down a website or a grid. This was intimate. It targeted Iranian leadership, their personal phones.
Wow.
Imagine you are a general in a reinforced bunker, 100 feet underground. You have a secure line. But suddenly, your personal cell phone in your pocket buzzes.
And it's a text from the enemy saying, wait and see.
It proves that the kernel, the deepest level of your command and control, is compromised. The integrity of the kernel was broken. It says, we aren't just at your border, we are in your pocket. It's a psychological dark switch before the physical one.
It's the ultimate power move. And at the same time, we have the print here on page 13 showing the USS Gerald R. Ford docking in Suda Bay on February 23rd.
Now, usually a port call is for rest and relaxation, shore leave. But the dossier flags this as a final logistics reset. They were there to load the final hardware.
And the strike window was predicted right here, Thursday, 21.0 to Friday, 04.00 UTC.
Nailed with 5 days of advance notice. It wasn't a guess, it was a schedule. The bulldozer logic is that when diplomacy enters timeout, military hardware is the only language the bunker comprehends. They don't send a letter. They send an aircraft carrier and a text message that says, I see you.
Moving to Act 4, the master router, February 28, 2026. The log says, February 28, 7 hours before impact. The definitive signal, the E-11A BACN fleet.
What is a BACN?
It stands for Battlefield Airborne Communications Node. It's a modified business jet. But inside, it is a flying server farm. Think of it as Wi-Fi in the sky.
So it connects things.
It translates. It allows an F-35 stealth fighter to talk to a Navy ship, which talks to a drone, which talks to a bomber. It fuses all their data into one master view.
And the print on pages 36 and 37 notes an anomaly 7 hours before.
Yes. The U.S. fleet of these planes is very small. Yet, on February 28th, 85% of the entire fleet, 6 out of 7 aircraft, were operating as the master router of the battlefield. That never happens for drills. It implies a massive amount of data is about to be moved. I see the general theater print on page 40. 2 carriers, over 300 aircraft.
It happens only for a coordinator event. The cyber dark switch is flipped, followed immediately by the kinetic hammer.
The dark switch turns off the power grid and the status systems.
Exactly. Functional annexation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to bomb the city to stop it. You just hack the industrial computers controlling the water, the electricity, the radar. You turn it off. The country is still there, but it has been paused by the system admin.
And once it's paused, the kinetic hammer drops. The MOPs.
Massive ordnance penetrators. The bunker busters dropped on the Fordo nuclear facilities.
The dossier uses a very specific phrase here. It says, Iran was not invaded, it was formatted.
That distinction is the core of this entire framework. An invasion implies boots on the ground, occupation, nation building. It's messy and expensive. Formatting implies wiping the operating system so it can be replaced. The regime's OS, its nuclear capability, its command structure was wiped.
You just hit format and walk away.
If the node is hostile, you wipe it. It treats war like IT maintenance.
It is terrifyingly efficient. And that brings us to the proof. We have a table here in the dossier, the audit table, the 68 hits. This is the proof of work. I want to run through these regions fast, like reading a machine code output. You give me the status.
Let's do it.
Region, Latin America, key events, capture of Maduro, total control of PDVSA, Cuba and Nicaragua isolated. Status.
Not validated. The handshake was successful. Energy flows sink to the core.
Region, North America, events, 25% tariffs on Canada, purge of the northern backdoor.
Validated. Firewall breach patched. Vulnerability closed.
Region, technology and AI, events, purge of Anthropic on February 27, synchronization of OpenAI and XAI.
Validated. AI consolidated as a weapon system. Fragmentation eliminated.
Region, macro and financial, events, gold at $5,220, oil at $50, the asphyxiation strategy.
Validated. The markets reacted exactly to the stress index. Fear measured in gold, control measured in oil.
Region, Asia Pacific, events, Tokyo Electron honors blacklist, TSMC diversifies.
Validated. Asian hard layer synchronized. The ink for the printer is secured.
Region, Europe and Russia, events, Dmitriev package of 12 trillion fails. Geneva talks fail on February 26.
Validated. The counter system collapsed.
Operation, Oblivion, events, the strike window, the 6 out of 7 E-11A fleet, dark switch, MOPs. Status.
Validated. Formatting executed with 100% precision.
68 hits. Which brings us to Act 5. The verdict of the architect. The institutional voice sums it up. 68 days, 68 hits, 100% precision. The system does not err, hardware does not lie.
And here, finally, the dossier reveals the persona behind the analysis. Pull up page 33. The SMU calculation of 7.8, the streak of 31 out of 31.
Wander Doc Missile.
Yes. He has a quote here that defines this entire new reality.
Yeah.
He says, I am not an analyst. I am a kernel monitor.
Think about what that means. An analyst looks at the user interface. A kernel monitor looks at the code running underneath.
He doesn't care what the politicians say. He cares where the aircraft carrier is. The logistical OS is the new reality. Traditional politics is dead. What remains is infrastructure. The tractor has passed through.
And his final note. The next target is already in the loading phase.
If you are a node in this network, you are being scanned right now.
Which brings us to the final ultimatum in the dossier, delivered in Portuguese. Synchronize ou torne-se lixo.
Synchronize or become junk.
Synchronize or become junk. It's the ultimate choice, 1 or 0.
Synced or deleted. You are either part of the core or you are waste.
That is a lot to process. We've gone from a political map to a circuit board in 1 hour. We hope this deep dive gave you a completely new perspective on the headlines. And it leaves you with a thought. If the world is just a server rack now, how long until the system decides that your sector is the one causing the latency?
Don't just watch the news. Watch the hardware.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay synchronized.